When it comes to matters environment, they're not, when you see humanity destroying the life supporting system, which is the environment. And the environment is very unforgiving. If you use the third law of Isaac Newton, third law of motion, you normally say for every action there is equal and opposite reaction.
That's true.
So what we are doing currently right now, the G20, what they are doing, because they have, they are doing majority of the emissions in the world, it will come back to haunt on us. So environment is part of our lives. It's not about tomorrow. It's not about the other part of the world. It's part of what is happening. It's what we eat, it's what we drink, and what we breathe. Yes. It
is what we breathe, it is what we eat. And look, so who bears the greatest responsibility of ensuring that, you know, our environment is clean and the world is not becoming hotter? Is it the developing countries? Is it the developed countries? Or is it the poor countries?
Every one of us is bearing the brunt of the degradation of the environment, the degradation of the ozone layer, the emissions, the poor quality of our environment, the crop failure, the floods, the rising of the temperatures by 2.5 degrees centigrade, the rising levels of water in our lakes and our oceans. Some cities are just going down. I mean, I was just the other day, I was in Hong Kong. They're putting a bit of, you know, filling the lake so that they can get some land because the water levels are coming up. So everybody is bearing the brunt of the climate change effects. And it's high time, and most of the developing countries are having a lot of effect. The China has a majority of the emissions in the world, and some part of the Europe and also the US. So, and they're also benefiting from, but Africa has a lot of land and has a lot of forest, but we are not benefiting from the carbon credits. Yes.
Now, you've talked about China, you've talked about the US, and these are the world's top emitters of green gas. The rest of us, the Africas of this world, I mean, when you look at their contribution to green gas, it's about 1%, you know, of what, you know, the developed countries are emitting. And so, who should bear the biggest responsibility of ensuring that this is stopped?
Brian, you have just said it, the G20. Because they produce about 90–95% of the emissions because of the level of industrialization. Africa, majority of Africa is about, we have forest all over. So in fact, we should have a special fund for the African continent because we are doing carbon sequestering. Yeah, when they produce a lot of emissions, we have planted a lot of tea, we have done a bit of agriculture, and those plants are doing carbon sequestering. Yes. So basically, when I look at what is happening at COP26, which is very good, there was a girl from Teto, from my area, and she did it so well. She had 4 minutes. To me, that should be the theme of the whole conference. But again, it has been a talk shop. Every day is a talk shop. We just talk about proposals. We just talk about very nice. Guys get standing ovations in those COP meetings and conferences. But when you go to the ground, we normally say things are different on the ground. That's what is very popular in Kenya. Ukipata kwa ground, mambo ni different. But when you go to those France, Paris, Glasgow now, you know, Bali, Brussels, all those meetings are, I would call them talk shop. Yes. When you go to the ground, and in fact, when you go to the books of most of the agencies doing the planting of trees in Kenya, they have very excellent reports. They have planted millions and millions of trees. They have spent millions and millions of dollars. But when you get to the ground, very few actors are succeeding. Just allow me to quote a case in point, like Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Energy. Yes. Ministry of Energy has done it so well to the level that their success rate is about 90–95%. But when it comes to other players, the corporate world, which is very good, I know there are initiatives by Toto Kenya, Safaricom, and quite a number of them. Equity Bank is also there. But the question is, who is making the follow-up to ensure that there is survival rate, that there is the canopy regeneration and development within this country. Yeah, like you just remember the other day, O'Brien, we were pouring out seeds in the Mau forest. Has somebody followed up how the success of that project was?
Yes.
We spent millions and millions of dollars having all those aircrafts. I can assure you, I was just there the other day, and the success rate is below 30%. Some
30%.
people are calling it zero success rate.
Yeah.
So how are we protecting our environment? Yeah, everybody wants to be the hummingbird.
I listened to the speech, the 4-minute speech by Elizabeth Wathuti, who is, by the way, a young Kenyan who is an environmental activist who has been given a platform at that level to talk about what the world needs to do, to safeguard the future of this world. She is in the same group with the likes of Greta she's called Greta Thunberg.
Yes.
And her clarion call was, it is time we embrace and we make matters of environment our everyday agenda. This is widely known. So how comes we are still discussing what to do and how to do it at Glasgow? We were there in France, and we can be guaranteed that we are also going to be there in the next 5 years discussing the same issues.
Thank you for that. I listened to her 4 minutes. She comes from our area, Teto, and Teto is a home of champions, and that's also where Professor Wangari Maathai came from, and that's where I also come from. And she spoke to the heart and not to the mind, because unless we become passionate about environment, unless we put environment as part of our lives, we're not going to sort out these issues. We are thinking environment is a far-fetched idea. It's for the G20, it's for the leash companies and corporates, but environmental issues is each one of us to be the hummingbird. If you look at what is happening in the world, we think, look at the COVID. It has brought down the stock market in the world, and everybody is worried. The stock exchange, securities have trembled all over the world. So everybody is concerned. How do we live? How do we make refurbish the economies in the world? But nobody is thinking about environment. Without environment, those businesses will not thrive. We are thinking environment is not part of our lives. It's like it's a standalone. Whereas we as humanity, we are threatening environment, which is the life supporting system for all other activities. Everybody wants to gain, whether it's political system, economic system, it wants to gain from the resources that are within our continent and within our world. But nobody is protecting those resources. Very soon, the environment will hit back at us. There will be scarcity of resources. There will be conflict all over because of water, because of, all those lands, effect of the climate change, and those conflicts will be unstoppable unless we act, and we act now. In fact, we ought to have acted yesterday. I was just listening to Professor Wangari Maathai. She's my destiny helper, and she's my mentor. She remains, legends do not die. Their spirits live on. And I was listening to her video this morning, and she talked about, we are neighbors in our rural home in a place called Gatobero, actually in a village called Nyadumari. And she referred to a river that borders our farm and her farm. And when she was a little girl, she used to go there. There was a river flowing down. There were tadpoles. There were those eggs of the frogs, and there were some other things. The ladies, the girls used to bite the breast so that they can grow big. Joroli. That's in the Kikuyu word. I don't know the English name. Joroli. those ones is an indication that the water was clean and it was pure, and the river was flowing, and you could easily take a banana root leaf and you drink that water. Today, as we speak, I was there last week, the river has dried completely, and it is dry, dry, and dry. That is an indication that the climate change is here with us. Climate change is not about Glasgow. It's not about Paris. It's not about the corporates. Climate change is affecting, in fact, greatly the poor people in the developing countries and the other developed countries.
And the question is, then, why should the people down in the villages care about the environment when they have bigger concerns like their next meal?
That's a good one. Environmental issue is the responsibility of the governance, the governing bodies and systems, the political systems, the people who have the economic systems that control this world. They are said to benefit more than the poor people, because the poor people is just, the poor person is just thinking about where the next meal will come from. The poor people are thinking about the economic development, about the basic needs, the food, the clothes, the shelter, education, and health. So it is the government within our countries to ensure that we who are thinking about the basic needs also contribute to the conservation of our environment and mitigate the effects of the climate change. It's a collective responsibility. Yeah, but don't expect somebody from somewhere in Lesotho just to think about environment. It must be guided by principles of the governance, good governance, political structures and goodwill from the politicians and the leadership of this country, and also the corporate world.
We are talking about, the world becoming hotter and hotter. And the target is to limit this to about 1.5 degrees Celsius.
Yes.
But there are warnings that if urgent measures are not put in place, the world is likely to hit 2 degrees centigrades.
Up to 2.5.
Up to 2.5. Now, help us understand, what is that?
Thank you, Brian. The earth is the only place we call home. And if we don't conserve the environment, if we don't protect the ozone layer, if we don't protect our natural resources, what are we going to do? The population in the world is growing very fast. Right now we have hit about 8.5 billion people in the world, yet the resources are not infinite, they are finite. And we are sharing those resources. The world is becoming hotter. And when it becomes hotter, that means it's going to have a distortion of so many systems. Yeah, some lakes will dry, the water bodies and water systems will become infinite, they will dry up, and at the same time, the crop failures, there will be floods, flash floods and all over things, there will be desertification. So, increase in temperature will have devastating effect to the humanity. And as we grow the market, the markets in the world, the stock markets in the world, as we do a lot of industrialization, the effect of the climate change will erode all those gains that we are trying to get on the economic side. So it's about time that we act on the environment side.
If the world was to get to 2.5 degrees centigrade, how hot can that be?
Very hot. Very hot, very hot. Honestly speaking, that will the effect of an increase of a degree in the normal temperature will mean that the ocean, the level of water in our oceans will go up. Some of the water bodies will dry up.
So we are likely to have hurricanes and tsunamis.
Yes, the what we call the covering or the snow cover in most of our mountains will melt down, and that means our river sources will not be there. So you can imagine the snow at Mount Kenya or Mount Kilimanjaro or Mount Everest just melting down. That means all the rivers and all the ecosystem that are supported by that river will be affected, greatly affected. And the communities will not have water to drink, and will not have water for our animals, and will not have water for our industries and our institutions. So once we don't have water, that will mean conflict. The literal resources that we have in terms of water bodies, now there will be conflict. And now we'll start now having, I liked when the Nobel Peace Prize, Nobel Institute in Oslo awarded Professor Wangari Maathai the Nobel Peace Prize on environment, because they knew if somebody is fighting for environmental injustices, you're bringing peace to the world. So that's quite critical. And let's not think that environment is just for the environmental activist, it's not just for the president, it's not for those guys going to Glasgow or Paris or Brussels or any other place. Environment is what you eat, is what you drink, is what you breathe in. So let's act today, not tomorrow. And by the way, I like one of the takeaways from the COP26 as they proceed. We are probably the last generation that can do something to save the world, to save the Mother Earth. Please, the window is closing. Can we act and act now for the future generations?
There are people who believe that the whole issue of climate change has been overblown and it does not exist. How do you convince such people?
Such people can be described with this hummingbird story that we always hear from our late Professor Wangari Maathai. The forest was on fire, there were elephants, there were big animals and lions, but there was this hummingbird that saw the forest was going to finish the whole, the fire was going to finish the whole forest, and the bird decided to act. So the bird went to the river with its small beak and brought out a drop of water to try and put out the fire. But the elephants were just saying, "What are you doing? There's nothing you're doing. The fire is too big." So they were just insignificant. They were not acting. But then the hummingbird continued to act. I wish we can become like the hummingbird. Otherwise, if we switch off, have escapism tendencies and attitude, that it's okay, it's nice, that environmental issues are for big people, for development partners. I mean, environmental issues is about welfare of our lives. Yes.
Look, in 2009, when the meeting in Copenhagen, Netherlands, the world agreed, or the G20 agreed to mobilize about $100 billion US dollars to help fund environmental projects in Africa. Part of it was to go towards decarbonizing our forests and our environment, to funding green energy sources. Today, and the target was 2020, by the way, which was last year. But today, it's about 80 billion shillings that has been mobilized so far. So they have fallen off target by about 20 billion shillings. Are you convinced that the world's 20 richest countries are serious about curbing the impact of climate change?
The G20 doesn't seem, in my view, doesn't seem to be serious about carbon emissions, doesn't seem serious about climate change. They're just having political gimmicks. They're just having knee-jerk reactions, whereas they're benefiting from environmental degradation. So I think it's about time that African and the developing countries held accountable the G20 countries.
But how would they do that?
If we come together, probably at the African Union or any other outfit, we can be able, or even you talk about the Middle East looping in, we can be able to negotiate. even for attacks. Because, number one, as I talked about the afforestation programs within our forests, a lot of resources is coming in. Even what you have talked about, the $80 billion. That money is coming in. But how is the ground? How is the survival rate of our forest? We're having very excellent programs, reports. Look at the Kenya Water Towers Agency. If you go through their reports, they have planted a lot of trees in terms of books. But when you go to the ground, what is the survival rate? So even if the G20 countries will be able to, of course we are saying that they mobilize more resources and they meet the Copenhagen commitment. Yeah, so that we are even able to pay the carbon credits and all those other things. But at the same time, we are saying let's have structured projects within the ground. That's extremely very critical. Let me take, for instance, the corporates within Kenya. We can have resources from our corporates, and they are doing very well. Like, let's say, like Safaricom can take a whole block within Mau Forest, maybe 200 hectares, and plant trees and nurture them for 4 to 6 years. That way, we are able to regenerate or even put up a canopy for carbon sequestering.
The world has moved to what we are calling now the carbon credits, whereby you sell your carbon footprint.
Yes.
How comes, as a country, we haven't deepened our engagement in these and ensure that we benefit from these multi-trillion-dollar industry?
O'Brien, I can tell you for free, for you to be approved, even as an organization or even as a group or even as an individual, to benefit from the carbon credits, is a whole process. It's so bureaucratic, and that's why most people have not, most organizations or even individuals or corporates have not benefited from that. It's a whole tedious bureaucratic process. Yeah, so a lot of money is allocated for carbon credits, but it's not flowing down. It's not trickling down. So I think what we need to do is create more awareness about environment, because environment is the way of life. O'Brien would want to have a clean environment, fresh air, breeze, green, green therapy because of trees and flowers. I mean, environment is not a standalone, as I said. It's a way of life. It's the food we eat. How good is that food?
Tell me this.
Yes.
The world developed economies, they have benefited tremendously from what you call coal energy in the last 50 years. Actually, coal energy drove what you call the industrial revolution in the West.
Yes.
Africa and the developing world is at a stage whereby they need more energy, they need cheaper energy. But the developed world is discouraging the use of coal. Are we applying double standards here? Double standards are applied. Africa has the largest deposits of coals in the world. Africa is not utilizing nuclear energy. Africa is the most underdeveloped, has the most underdeveloped geothermal and also the solar systems. So it's like we are encouraged to proceed with our own these fossil fuels, which has a very high carbon emissions. Whereas the rest of the world is going through electric cars, electric trains, they're going through solar panel. Every house in Europe has a solar panel and solar heater. So they don't have the hydropowers and, So the renewable energy is the way to go. But Africa, we need to shape up. We don't need to follow the rest of the world. We normally follow behind the world. Why can't we become in front of the world? We become trailblazers.
Trailblazers. The technology that was used in Europe is now taking shape in Africa. I mean,
50 years ago.
50 years ago. Where everybody is going to electric cars, electric trains, everything is solar, wind, renewable energy. I don't know how good the nuclear energy is to the environment, but we need to check on that. So everybody is going towards that. Renewable energy, affordable energy, very efficient energy, very reliable energy. Africa, we are still in the fossil. I mean, we need to shape up. We need to rise up to the occasion as a continent.
Kenya has set a target of the year 2030 to migrate its energy sources to green. Do you believe this is achievable?
It is extremely achievable. There is nothing you cannot achieve if you are committed to it. As a country, I know we have very good leadership and governance and commitment and goodwill in the political spheres. And I think by that time, we may miss the mark probably by a year or two. But the way we are moving quite well in this country. Yeah.
You know, as a country, I mean, it has been proven that we have tremendous resources that would help in the country achieving its green energy status. And we are talking about nuclear, we are talking about geothermal, where Kenya has reported reserves of about 10,000 megawatts. But Kenya is just a small dot, you know, in a bigger picture. Even if we were to go green and the rest of the world is not willing to toy along, are we likely to have any impact, really?
O'Brien, revolutions are started by one person. So if Kenya takes it up to herself, and which is, we should, because we are also a leader in our own sphere. If Kenya can be able to adopt the renewable energy, probably most of the other people, the other African countries will benchmark from us, and they will be able to start. Because you cannot wait the whole of Africa to go renewable energy. Somebody has to start, and that somebody is Kenya. I'm very proud Kenyan, because the way we are moving as Kenya, very soon Kenya is going to be a powerhouse in Africa and the rest of the world. We are committed people. We are moving in the right direction. How am I praying that 2022 does not distract us from our economic agenda? Let's maintain that momentum. And as a people, we'll be very proud 5-10 years to come. Yes.
Kenya has been toying up with the idea of setting up a coal power plant in Lamu, the Lamu power plant.
Yes.
It is cheaper, it is easy to set up, but it has faced a barrage of criticism, and we have seen environmental activists even moving to court to stop this. On the other hand, we have also been discussing the issues of setting up our first 1,000 megawatts nuclear power plant, and the discussions are still ongoing whether to set up this. Do you think this is a step in the right direction?
Is a step in the right direction? I like the way we are moving, because Kenya, we normally do planning. The Institute of Nuclear Science at the University of Nairobi was set up just to make sure that we have the capacity to manage a nuclear power plant. It has been progressing very well, and nuclear power all over the world is cheaper. Probably we need to reevaluate a few things about environmental issues and the decomposing of the materials there. Yeah. The coal plant sometimes is give and take. Look at the bypasses all over, like now the one that passed through Nairobi National Park. The environmental people, which were part of it, we were saying is going to have effect on the animal corridors, the migratory corridors, and all those other things. It's going to have a negative impact. But sometimes it's give and take. We have to maintain a certain balance between the economic value and the environmental value. Sometimes you give in to a little bit of thing. If that coal, and I know that coal plant in Lamu is going to be a game changer, unless it has extreme devastating environmental effect, I'm of the opinion that we go ahead with that project. Yes. Sometimes it's give and take.
Do you feel like we are blowing both cold and hot? You know, on one hand, we are saying that we want to go green energy by the year 2030.
Yes.
And then on the other hand, we are pursuing coal energy, which has been proven to be a serious emitter of green gas emission.
That's a hard question, but it's a good one. As a country, we are developing, and Kenya is not that we are not in the G20. So, as much as we invest in the geothermal, and we also invest in solar and also the wind power sources. About the core, I leave it now to the experts, because that's a tricky question. It's a tricky question. But as a country, we need to see. We need to pursue a little bit. We need to be a little bit selfish as a country.
Do you believe it is high time that we started thinking about setting up a nuclear power plant, and we haven't thought through the issues of nuclear waste and leaks?
Yeah, that's a critical one. That's a critical one because the nuclear waste and that's a gray area that needs to be looked at. But we also have to learn from. We need to benchmark with other countries who have succeeded in it, and see how they have mitigated about the nuclear wastes. Yeah, the radioactive materials and all those other things. So probably we need to look at the best practices all over the world, and I know the government is also looking at that.
But who would you qualify to be as the best practice in the world? Because we saw the crisis in Fukushima just the other day.
Yes.
And Japan, you know, is a world leader in terms of nuclear energy, in terms of nuclear technology.
Yes.
But they were facing a grave crisis there because of the leaks at the Fukushima nuclear plant. So what should we follow, or who should we look up to?
O'Brien, there's a thin line between environmental conservation and economic development. Because if you look at our energy needs as a country, it's growing. Yeah, there's a lot of industrialization, there's a lot of urbanization, a lot of many institutions are coming up. The requirement for power is so high. For cheaper power, the electricity tariffs in Kenya are so high. So, like just the other day, we are talking about the independent power producers. We need to phase them out. So, how do we balance between the environmental dividends and economic dividends? That's very critical. That's very critical. And sometimes you find that the economic dividend supersedes the environment dividend. But the overall thinking should be, let's mitigate the climate change effects. Yes.
You're watching this conversation, and of course we are live from Broadcasting House. We're analysing the COP26 meeting, which is currently underway in the city of Glasgow, Scotland, and we are looking at the commitments that world leaders are likely to make the world sustainable, and of course to ensure that we limit green gas emission, which has been proven to be fatal to the well-being of our environment. Kenya is represented there, and of course President Uhuru Kenyatta yesterday made a passionate plea to world leaders, and of course more to the G20 countries to rethink their funding their funding on green energy sources. You know, are calling them to be more proactive in supporting green energy sources. And the question that we're asking is this: is Glasgow likely to be another Paris in terms of coming up with beautiful commitments and wonderful documents, but without a follow-through policy? That is the question that we are facing here in studio. And of course, we are doing this with Alex Getonga. He's a managing director at Tanaloop Consultancy, as well as a green energy expert here in studio. At O'Brien Kimani is my Twitter handle. Getonga, do you have a Twitter handle?
Yes,
as well?
Alex Gadi. That's my Twitter handle.
That is your Twitter handle.
Yes.
So let's come back to the events that are happening at Glasgow.
Yes.
China the second biggest emitter of green gas in the world is missing from that meeting, as well as Russia. What message are they sending to the world?
Of course, they are sending the message they are not ready to get committed to the outcome of the COP26, which is very unfortunate. If the big boys are not where things are being discussed, they are not committed to the outcome of the meeting. And I think it's about high time that we take responsibility as a people, because you are the one who does all the emissions in this world, 90%, and then you don't come to discuss about the environment. Where do you want us to go? Once we spoil the world, the earth, the mother earth, where do we go? Do we go to which other, Venus or Mars? Can we go to Mars? We can't. Can we go to where? So where are we putting the economic consideration before the environmental considerations? What does China and Russia want us to do? As we are responsible, Africa, we are responsible, we are saying this is what we want. I was very happy with the president, what he talked about. I was very happy with Eliud Kipchoge. Because Kenya is doing the best, and African countries are doing the best, but our hearts are tied. What emissions are coming from Africa? 1%. So?
India has made a pledge to go green by the year 2070.
Yes.
Russia has also said that they're going to become a net or a net zero emitter of green gas by the year 2060. Should we also set a target for ourselves as a country?
Yeah, we should be able to do that, but comparing India and Kenya and probably most of the African countries is a little bit tricky, because India is a more developed economy. It's quite a little bit vibrant, but remember what we did for Vision 2030. We said by this year we need to be a middle-income country, and even if we miss that mark, or probably we'll be there, we'll be able to achieve it. So I think as a country, we need to set a target, and have policies and programs towards that, and probably that will guide now our investment. And with very good strategies and policies, we may find ourselves now saying we are not going to invest in the core project, we are going to invest in solar or even wind power. Yes.
The COP26 has developed a list of what they are saying are achievable goals.
Yes.
And one of them is banning coal worldwide. Bearing in mind that the United States, Europe, China, India, and even Russia, they're some of the biggest users of coal energy. Do you see this happening?
It will be a little bit tricky, but it's thinking in the right direction, and that is why I'm also telling you about Kenya. If Kenya, we have those coal in the Lamu, and also Africa has some of the largest deposits of coal. There has to be a trade-in, and that is why the funding comes in. If the COP26 can come up with the funding mechanism in something we call the trade-in, don't mine your coal for energy, but we are going to subsidize and bring some investment in solar and wind power and renewable energy and geothermal for that matter. So if we go that way, have a trade-in investment that don't do this, like now Kenya, we can say, okay, fine, don't mine your copper from the fund that is going to be committed within by COP26, but we'll have $1 billion for your renewable energy. Then we can do that. But as a country, do we have those resources to do a trade-in?
So, if we were to ban coal, and bearing in mind that, the Moi Basin in Kitui County has coal resources valued at more than 1 trillion Kenya shillings.
Yes.
So, should the people of Kitui and the people of Kenya continue to be poor by not exploiting the coal resources that they have? because of the commitments made by the West?
Brian, that is good thinking. And I talked about that. China is looking at the economic dividend and not the environmental dividend. But Africa is being told to have economic consideration before the economic consideration.
Economic consideration?
Yes.
Before?
They have environmental consideration before economic consideration. So we end up being poor, whereas the people who have major emissions, carbon emissions, they are in the G20. So you continue planting trees, we continue mining our coal and producing energy in nuclear and coal reactors. So we'll continue to be poor unless now we change our thinking and say, okay, fine, the coal in Kitui, let's mine. Unless now the COP26 and other environmental funds and the G20 put up a certain fund and tell us, don't mine your coal in Kitui, don't mine your coal in Lamu, and this is the $5 billion for your solar plants or, for your wind power. There has to be a trade-in.
Another proposal coming out of the COP26 is for countries to remove subsidies on fossil fuel. We saw the other day when the government removed subsidies on petrol and diesel and even on kerosene, whereby prices went through the roof and there was a huge public uproar. Is this likely to happen, especially in developing countries?
I'll talk from a personal perspective. Fuel subsidies are good because, honestly speaking, our incomes are low. So once you withdraw fuel subsidies, the fuel prices will go up and our economic activities will crash. So that to me is not applicable to Africa. Removing fuel subsidies is just a thinking of people in a boardroom, but they don't know the reality on the ground. Yes, because I come first. My existence comes first before environment. Please don't make me pay because of your poor governance of environmental issues. Yeah. When I wish you can bring in solar-powered cars, electric-powered cars. If we zero rate some of those cars, and maybe we phase out the fossil fuels, that probably would be good. But when you say that we remove subsidies in all over Africa, we are crashing the African economy.
Actually, banning non-electric vehicles is also another proposal. But G20 is the world leader in the production of vehicles.
Yes.
And more than 95% of vehicles they produce are non-electric.
Yes.
And when you look at Africa, for example, I mean, the number of electric vehicles we have here in Africa is less than 1% of all the vehicles that we have.
O'Brien, have you ever seen an electric car in Kenya? Even one?
Well, I have, but they are always scattered. I would want to imagine there are less than 100 electric vehicles in this country.
Yes.
So, where does that leave us if the West was to ban the production of non-electric vehicles? What becomes to the rest of us?
You know, they produce 95% of the G20 produce 95% of all the cars in the world. So if they want us to change now to electric cars, they can easily do that, probably within 5-10 years. But now they continue to produce fossil fuel petrol cars. So, I mean, honestly speaking, there's a contradiction in their strategies and their commitment. So Africa, we are disadvantaged because we are not in manufacturing of those cars. We rely on cars from outside. We also rely on, majority of fuel in Africa comes from outside Africa. So removing fuel subsidies will have devastating effect on the African economies, and some of them will crash.
Another proposal is to ban the mining of oil and gas. And this is being proposed at a time when developing economies are at a stage of exploiting their mineral resources like gas and oil. Kenya, we just discovered oil in Turkana. We have proven reserves of gas in Lamu.
Yes.
So, if this was to be banned, what becomes of our gas and oil reserves?
I think we are applying double standards in COP26 because we must also look at the developing countries. We have suffered, we have bared the biggest brunt of the climate change effects, the floods, desertification, the drought in this continent. Our economies are not growing. Our food production is low, about 30-40%. So having drastic measures, especially now banning the mining, the exploration of those resources for fossil fuels, I think there is a hidden agenda.
Do you think the COP 2016 is having Africa in mind, the proposals they are making?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
So who are these making these recommendations, and who are they targeted to?
I would think COP26, there's a heart behind it. There's some multi-billion companies and agendas behind it. I'm sorry to say this because, honestly speaking, the proposals they're coming up, they're not practical. They're just about to crash the African economy.
You're talking about the corporate world, you know,
yes,
being behind some of the proposals. About 40 companies, you know, have come together,
yes,
you know, during the, about 400 of them, not 40. And they have committed about 130 trillion, all these companies, you know, combined. Their worth is about 130 trillion
yes,
US dollars.
Yes.
And they're saying, look here, we are willing to fund environmental friendly projects. And so this is putting developing countries at a crossroad, because coming up with the projects that are green or that are environmental friendly, I mean, there's a price tag. And Africa is a poor continent, okay, in terms of financial resources.
Yes.
So where is this putting our development agenda?
You know, African countries, we have sovereignty, and we must protect our sovereignty by hook and crook.
Is this sovereignty imagined or real on the ground?
The sovereignty could be political but not economic. But at the same time, a poor person also has integrity, has identity. So it's about high time the G20 and those multi-billion companies and corporates respect us, give us a bit of respect and dignity, because being poor doesn't mean that we cease to be human. And we also think, can we also grow our own local solution to environmental issues and climate change issues? Yes. Must all the solutions be based from proposals from all over? Yeah, I think it's about time, O'Brien, that we come up with a think tank as a continent and as a country to come up with some a bit of solutions. Because everything is set. Please do away with this, do away with this. Suppose we mine that coal in Kitui and we get trillions of dollars. That will be a game changer in our economy. We become a donor instead of a recipient of debt and all those other collaterals we are getting.
Look.
Yeah.
So, as a continent, I mean, how do we get a position at the high table and lay our demands and our interests and say, this is what we want as a continent, and this is what we expect you to do, and we are going to do this? How do we get elevated to that level?
Once we put our economics expectations on the table, how we want to develop our economies as a country. Let me give a case in point. the River Nile. River Nile originates from Uganda and goes all the way to Egypt. Several countries benefit from River Nile, and you know there is water treaty that governs the River Nile. How they have managed to live in harmony and to solve their issues and their disagreements is something that we need to think also along the energy issues.
Yeah.
China and Russia, and probably even America, they are benefiting from coal industry, and they have made billions and billions of dollars. Why is it that it is only a project in Kitui that can bring problems? Is there a way Kenya can say, okay, fine, let's start by our own sovereignty and do the mining and make our people rich? After all, people are dying because of floods, because of hunger, and other issues. Can we sometime also do some things that so to benefit our people? Because you are telling us to phase out coal, but you have already benefited and you continue to benefit from coal mining and coal business and getting energy from coal. But as we have the largest deposits here, but you don't want us to mine. Yeah.
But very well. We'll continue with this conversation. And of course, if you're just joining us, we are doing a surgical analysis of the COP26, a meeting of top global leaders to chart the way forward on the future of the world and how to conserve our environment to ensure human existence is guaranteed in the next 20, 40, 50, even 100 years. We are looking at the pros and cons of the proposals that have been made so far by world leaders at Glasgow. And you're welcome to join us. Time now to take you to Pan-African Hotel, where the Ministry of Livestock, or the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Livestock is having a briefing, and let's now listen in to the Chief Administrative Secretary.
The counties, and this is the only sector that grew during the pandemic period. We are supporting farmers. We have an insurance scheme that is still supporting farmers and the asal areas. And the FAO has looked at it and they say it's one of the best. And when they want to replicate the same in the entire continent. We have also have KBC that is producing vaccines, animal vaccines, and is the best in Eastern Central Africa. We are only compared to South Africa. It contributes, agriculture and agro-related industries contribute about 60% to our GDP. So we are doing well. But we agree that there are several challenges that are affecting us, that are making farmers not move. We have cartels that are coming. If you go to Western Kenya, all farmers are now complaining, especially the sugar farmers, because of sugar from other countries. You find sugar coming from Brazil, if it's going to Uganda, then again it's brought back. Some of the challenges that we are having. We have problems in coffee, and even the other day I was listening and looking at the TV. I saw a mama already complaining seriously in Thika that for you to break even, if you have to sell your eggs, a crate of eggs at 265 shillings, but eggs are coming in from Uganda at a cost of 230 shillings, which is very serious. So those are some of the areas that we have to come in strongly as a ministry and work closely with all the stakeholders involved so that we are able to streamline and make our farmers work. It's very sad that a country of Kenya's stature and highly respected in terms of agriculture is importing now nearly everything, which is very bad. So I wish to recognize you, stakeholders, including the public and private sector, for having taken time to participate in this validation meeting for the livestock identification and traceability strategy and regulations. The strategy and regulations are necessary to enable us build a framework that can guide the long-term implementation of animal identification, registration, and traceability in the country, which is critical in the livestock sector. The livestock sector plays an important role in the national economy of Kenya, with a direct contribution of 12% to the national gross domestic product, and it also employs about 8 million people. Livestock sector supplies the domestic requirements for meat, milk, dairy products, eggs, other livestock products, while accounting for 30% of the total marketed agricultural products. So the sector earns the country substantial foreign exchange through export of livestock and livestock products. The sector also contributes substantial earnings to the households through a sale of livestock and livestock products, and provides raw materials for agro-based industries. Ladies and gentlemen, livestock identification and traceability has extensive benefits in animal health management, certification of animals and animal products for trade, and providing quality and safety assurance for food of animal origin, which is an important global phenomenon. Like one of you observed, we want to extensive in terms of exporting our animals and animal products. And there are some countries that are very strict, especially the European market, which require that each animal that you're exporting or each product that you're exporting, they want to know the history of that product. And they're insisting that our animals should have passports. I know maybe some of us here do not even have passports, but I think that the animal that we are sending there should have passports, so that they're able to trace whether this animal has ever suffered from any disease, whether it was stolen, and so forth. So this is key. We also have the problem, the cattle rustlers. I think this one will also really help us to control that, so that if somebody is stealing animals that have cheap, we're able to follow it up to where it is. So this is key. Although the need for its adoption and implementation in Kenya has been recognized for over a decade, there has not been a cogent strategy and modern regulations for its coordinated and fast implementation. I am made to understand that development of the strategy and regulations has therefore been crafted to respond to emerging demands in livestock production, animal diseases control and animal welfare, livestock marketing and trade for security, and in cattle raising areas. The strategy and regulations developed are informed by international standards based on World Animal Organization, that's the OIE, and Food and Agriculture Organization FAO guidelines, and experiences learned from benchmarking visits to more advanced jurisdictions. I'm told that in Africa, this has been properly implemented in Botswana. They are doing well. They are able to trace all the animals, although we also have our sensors here, but I don't think we have reached that level, and that's where we want to go. The strategy and regulations has incorporated stakeholder views input by a thematic working group on policy legislation and standards, livestock market requirements, the recommendations of livestock studies carried out in the country over the last 9 years, and socio-cultural considerations among diverse livestock keepers in Kenya. It also took cognizance of ongoing development of livestock export zones under the Kenya Vision 2030. Ladies and gentlemen, animal diseases have potential to significantly affect international trade. For this reason, animal identification and traceability systems, which help to prove freedom from, are becoming a requirement for access to specific regional and international markets. As a result, many countries worldwide, including emerging economies, have put such systems in place, increasing human population, economic growth, and urbanization. Increased consumer demand for food.
The Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, discussing livestock matters, that is Godana Doyo, discussing issues around livestock and what the government is doing to enhance the welfare of livestock farmers, and of course the mitigation measures that the government has put in place to rescue the suffering of livestock farmers, and of course bearing in mind that livestock farming is a critical ingredient in Kenya's economy. We continue to lay bare the discussions taking place in Scotland. Remember, the COP26 is taking place in the city of Glasgow. World leaders have descended on that city with their private jets to discuss how to curb green gas emission. We are doing this with the help of Alex Gitonga. He's a he's an environmental expert, and of course he's helping us to try and understand whether world leaders are serious and what is the way forward in dealing with matters green and environment. Gitonga, before I let you go, because time is well spent.
Yes.
So if you were given a platform at Glasgow to address world leaders, what would you tell them as a man who comes from Africa, who comes from a developing economy like Kenya?
As the former personal assistant to Nobel 2004 Nobel laureate, Professor Wangari Maathai, I would urge all the participants in that room, in that conference hall in Glasgow, to become the hummingbird. To talk more and act less. To act more and talk less. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it will still remain at talk shop. Let's look for practical solutions, strategies, down to other strategies that will have higher impact. Let's also do the funding, increase the funding, because as the greatest producers of green gas emissions in the world, the G20 has a responsibility to pay up, to own up and pay up, at least provide some a bit of funding for the developing countries. I would talk more to their hearts than their mights. That this is probably the only opportunity we have to save our Mother Earth. And if we don't act today, the generations to come will blame us. So it's about time that collectively we do those small things that collectively will have bigger impact in saving our Earth and conserving our environment.
Very good. And I believe they will listen and act.
Yes.
Gitonga, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank
we
you.
Look forward for engaging with you more in the future.
Thank you. And I've been nominated for the Go Green Lifetime Achievers Award 2021. Okay. So just being the hummingbird, things are coming. And I ask for votes so that we win this one. Thank you so much.
And we wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And we hope you clinch that award.
Thank you so much, O'Brien.
Very good.
You are the best.
Thank you. We've been discussing matters COP26, of course, with a critical view on what world leaders are doing and saying in Glasgow, with a question: how do we accelerate a project that will curb green gas emission? How do we increase funding to green projects? And how do we curb the rising, how do we stop the world from becoming hotter as we move forward? We'll be watching to see what recommendations the COP26 meeting will come out with, because in the future It will be judged by what they do, but not much what they say. The situation is dire. To quote Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley, when she addressed the meeting, she said, "It is time we put environmental matters in our heart." Thank you for watching. The next conversation is around the engineering fraternity. They also have a role to play in making the world a better place in terms of design and, of course, ensuring that the built environment goes green. You're watching Bizcheck, live from Broadcasting House. Stay right here.
Do you have any idea what we could do with that much wealth? You can make any note that you can't. Quite a brown one is my favorite.
I have lost a grand total of 28,400 and I'll be very happy if I can get it by next week.
Ati next week? How about later today? Next week is a long time from now. We might just get another excuse. Today, Farah.
Classmates, every Saturday on KBC.
My name is Rosemary Warongo and I'm a wildlife folio.
The Grevy's zebra is one of Africa's most endangered animals.
In Kenya we have 2,812. How they live as families, it's just like the way we live at home.
All you need is a camera. Take a photograph.
I just take the image and drag it in the software.
Upload it onto the website and participate as a citizen scientist. This is Wildlife Warriors, and I'm Paula Kahumbu.
Hata kuna boys tulikuwa tunasoma naye primo, yeye aliachia class 6. Aende akalime viazi. Sasa tunaongea na wewe kwa mpaka na punda. Kana unacheka? 2020 sidhani tutaigonga rock bottom. A lot of us sidhani tutaigonga rock bottom. Yaani imefika place maka kanisa imefungwa. Wewe kutoka uzaliwa ushaisikia kanisa imefungwa. Babangu ni reverend, hajaikosa kwenda job. If 2020 is something to go by. Mi saa hii unachekia hata hii mwaka ikaisha kama sijatengeneza any profit. But I'm healthy. Tuko sawa, tuko bare minimum. I'll be so happy. Oi. Nehi nyajafa munene waita unyitete na tauro nengo. Hello, how are you? My name is Timothy Kimani, aka Cute Njugush. Usidhani ni mwana muziki yako hapa. I'm here to tell you, this Sunday 6 p.m, don't miss Cynthia Nyamai.
They put their boots on the ground to defend and protect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Republic of Kenya. After thorough training, another lot of recruits is now ready for that active patriotic duty. Catch KBC Channel 1 for live coverage of Kenya Defence Forces pass-out parade from Moi Barracks, Eldoret. We take it on at the right time.
Honorable Musalia Mudavadi.
The Honorable Mutahi Kagwe.
Chief Justice Martha Karambuko.
This is KBC, is the voice of Kenya.
Asking the right questions.
I don't know how it made you feel as speaker who is presiding over a house where members can be compromised with 10,000 shillings.
We keep our guests comfortable. A mission to ensure our audience gets a complete story.
For a few hours or so, I thought this is it. My end has come.
If really we want an end of this pandemic, we must fight.
Our goal, to tell it as it is for the benefit of our viewer.
And I'm sure we will have good discussions.
All right.
That will make probably your viewers understand KDF better.
With 21 radio outlets.
During a live interview on KBC TV, Chief of Defense Forces General Robert Kibosh.
Jaji mkuu kwa mara ya kwanza katika mahojiano yake ya kipekee na runinga ya KBC Channel 1.
And 2 TV stations covering over 90% of the entire country. The message always gets home. KBC, the home of on-air TV interviews.
Haya machozi ni ya kipenzi chako Lea.
Kwaje mpaka huyu wakili akakuwa na makaratasi mbele kwake? Si nadhani shemeji yangu ndo afawe na hii karatasi mbele kwake.
Kwa nini mimi?
Maya, leo utaniambia utoka wapi ama pia utanificha?
Sikiliza wewe. Kama huwezi niongelesha mimi kwa heshima, tafadhali usiniongeleshe.
Umeshindwa baba. She is too much for you.
Nikishapata kile ninachotaka kwa yule msichana, I swear mami utaenjoy. Bado ahadi yangu mimi na iko vile vile.
Yusuf mtu wako yanipigia. Umeona?
Kasimu basi mami nawe.
Hatueleweki kushinda wala hatueleweki kushindwa. Sasa wewe hebu niambie, kesi tunashinda ama tunashindwa?
Hii kesi na mwanangu tunakwambiaje tunatoboa?
Mama, mimi kule kuna maswaiba zangu. Huwa wanaambia kila kitu.
Log on to the KBC website at www.kbc.co.ke to get the latest breaking news, entertainment, sports, politics, lifestyle or business trends from Kenya and around the world. Never miss new episodes from your favorite TV shows, reruns and movies. Just stream online or watch live on your YouTube channel at KBC Channel 1 TV shows. For the day's biggest stories, trustworthy news and family entertainment, log on to KBC Channel 1. Watch what you want anytime, anywhere.
Tell you is what the Lord commanded. We go forward into the land he promised our forefathers. I follow his word without question. It is not too late to save ourselves. Better to go back to Egypt than to die here. Moses, they meant no harm. They simply worry for themselves, as if the Lord hasn't proven he'll care for their every need.
We feel for your grief, Moses, but our animals will soon die of thirst.
You're watching Bizcheck live from Broadcasting House, and we've been talking about meetings and meetings and meetings. Next week, more than 100 engineers descend on the city of Mombasa to discuss the engineering fraternity, the current challenges and the future, and of course, the opportunities. That is our conversation for now. This meeting is coming at a time when the sector is facing tremendous challenges, from the impact of climate change to quacks. Those are some of the issues that they are going to discuss during that meeting. And this is, of course, what we are going to discuss right now with the help of stakeholders in that industry. And I'm talking about engineers. On my immediate left is Engineer Maurice Kagwe. He's a member of the Institution of Engineers of Kenya. Thank you, Maurice, for joining us.
Thank you, thank you.
And right next to Maurice, engineer, is Shamia Kiteme. He's also an engineer and also a member of the Institutions of Engineers of Kenya, joining us on Bizcheck. Asante sana, the two of you, for coming along.
Thank you very much.
I want to start with you, Engineer Shamia. Last year, the conference never took place because of COVID-19 challenges. Here we are. What should we expect out of that meeting?
Thank you very much. Perhaps to begin by correcting you, my name is Engineer Shama Kiteme.
Shama.
I'm an elected council member of Institution of Engineers of Kenya. Last year we had the conference, but in a scaled down version.
Yeah.
The bigger number of our members were following the conference virtually, and then we had a small number physically, just to comply with COVID-19 regulations. So this time round, because we have a situation far much improved for COVID-19, we're looking at bigger numbers, and we're looking at intense conversations about the engineering sector and the critical roles we play in the economy. You understand, engineers are central to so many things that affect our economy. Talk of energy, talk of infrastructure, talk of food security, talk of healthcare, and basically the Big Four agenda. So we will have intense conversations and, ideas about revival of the economy and basically looking forward. And we have the Vision 2030. And, our economy is quite robust, especially in the infrastructure industry. Talk of roads, buildings, the energy sector. So that's basically what we'll be looking at in the conference, which begins on 8th through to 12th. Yeah.
It's good that you have put that into perspective because the meeting, this is going to be the 28th meeting. The previous 26 meeting, have been held physically. And, they were held in a big way. Last year was a little bit scaled down with very small number of physical members, attending that meeting. The majority were, of course, virtual. But now we are coming at a time, or this meeting is coming at a time when COVID-19 somehow disrupted, many things, including the built environment here in Kenya. And I want to hear from Maurice Kagwe. This is not the end of many pandemics.
Yes.
What has the industry learned that is going to apply in the future in case the world was to go through another pandemic like this one?
Thank you very much. First, I start by appreciating this opportunity that you have given the fraternity of engineers to actually think around the challenges we are going through at this time. And back to your question about the COVID season, the Kenyan engineers have learned a lot, and not only the engineers, we as Kenyans have appreciated the role, especially of having local solutions to our problems. We must have all come to know that currently we have no vaccines. We are relying on foreign nations for vaccines. But engineers have really taken that seriously. They even, during the crisis, the engineers took part in coming up with ventilators with the local institutions. And for this conference, actually, it is aligned with this theme of COVID-19, where engineers will actually be presenting solutions that they have to such situations as what we have had in this country. So part of the research that our presenters will be presenting there will be what have we learned and what role can engineers play to really scale this challenge, and others which are similar and will always be with us as a people. So maybe to just summarize what we are expecting there, we will be having engineers who will be, for instance, telling us how is our industry, the manufacturing industry, aligned to coming up with solutions whereby we can team up with other scientists to come up with our own vaccines. So those are solutions which we expect to be discussed there. And not only that, also the way we are working, the platforms we are working through nowadays. Most of us are not working physically, we are working virtually. Those are engineering solutions which have come to the country and to the world at this time.
Very well. And another issue that is likely to come up is how to induct more members to become certified engineers. Look, you have a situation whereby in a country of close to 50 million people, you only have about 2,200 certified engineers out of more than 17,000 graduate engineers. How do you bring in graduate engineers into the certified environment, Engineer Shamia?
Thank you very much for that question. It's a good one. It's a fact that we have so many graduate engineers, and it would have been expected that many transition to become professional engineers. Now, this is what happens when you graduate as a trainee engineer. You expected to accumulate experience in what we call initial professional development, and when you accumulate the experience, then you are supposed to go through an interview process with the Engineers Board of Kenya, and then you become a registered engineer. Now, when you are a registered professional engineer, then you can assume more responsibility as a professional, and that is the importance of being licensed. Now, one of the issues that comes up is, when you graduate, are you going to get experience that is relevant and that will help you to become licensed? But what we have done is that we have enhanced the process of mentorship and ensure that many graduate engineers get the right experience that they need to get, and even attach them to mentors so that they are able to prepare to take the interview, professional interview that is conducted by Engineers Board of Kenya, and become then licensed engineers. At that point, they can assume more responsibility. And this does not only happen with engineers alone. Doctors need to be licensed. Lawyers need to be admitted to the bar. And so IEK, Institution of Engineers of Kenya, has been very intentional in terms of carrying out training, exposure in professional interview preparations sessions, and just mentorship sessions, so that young engineers are able, one, to get the right experience, but two, also apply to be licensed engineers, because we need more engineers to be licensed. And the conference plays a role in that. In addition to get 25 CPD points for those who are already licensed, the graduate engineers have an opportunity to get exposure, network, and have an experience of interacting with experienced engineers, licensed engineers, and it's part of encouraging them to get registered and take more responsibilities in their profession. Absolutely.
As a young engineer, what do you think is the challenge we're having here? Because you have a situation whereby more than 1,000 graduates, are graduating every year from our universities, but you still have a very small number of certified engineers. So where is the disconnect here?
The problems that the young graduate engineers are facing are actually a thing of public knowledge. So once young engineers leave school, the first challenge they are facing is getting opportunity out here. As we might all be aware, we are having so many infrastructure projects in the country. But when we look at them, the question we ask, are our engineers proportionately reflected? Because that's the first place that our young engineers should land, so that they start their training and mentorship program. So those are that is one of the challenges that we are facing. The other challenge that young engineers are facing in their training to get the stature of professional engineers is professional mentorship. So professional mentorship means you might get a job whereby it is the business is engineering related, but do you have a mentor to take you to the next level? So that is another challenge that they are facing, because you might realize that you might find a job whereby the environment does not favor your professional development. And how is the institution of engineers has faced that matter together with the engineers board and other corporations that are engineering related, whereby when we get graduates from universities, we are having a graduate program that is already ongoing, whereby they are attached to projects and to mentors, just to guide them through, so that we deal with this matter of shortage of graduate engineers. So that is, those are the two main issues which we are dealing with. And we are hoping that if they are addressed urgently and as we go along, we shall get more engineers being exposed and being ready to take over the roles of professional engineers. So that's the matter at hand. Yes.
And when you also look at training, because I also know that that is something that is going to be discussed there. When you look at our programs in terms of training, are they crafted in a way that they are addressing today's engineering demands? Because the world is moving to artificial intelligence, to big data, and to analytical skills. Are we well crafted, within those areas?
Maybe from my part, and having gone through the same path, I think our education system is well constituted. But there is some element of it that is lacking. Connecting the practice out here and the education which they are learning, which is a key component of engineering training and practice. We have to connect every student of engineering with the market where they practice. It is only then that these theories and the facts they learn will make sense. So that is the link that is missing. Of course, our engineering bodies, I have to thank them, because at this moment they are really trying to ensure that our universities have lecturers who are backed by the engineering bodies, and our students are also exposed to the market. Of course, there are other legal issues, especially on how to accredit these courses, whereby the mandate currently lies with the Commission of Higher Education. But the best practices try to ensure that what is taught is also accredited by the practicing regulators and even the body of engineers, so that there is that connection.
And that is the crux of the matter here. And Shami, I want your thoughts on this. I mean, there was a push and pull between Commissioner for Higher Education and the Engineers Registration Board, and who is supposed to develop curriculum for engineers and who is supposed to supervise this. But the High Court ruled that that is the work of a Commission for Higher Education. Do you believe that this is the way to go?
Well, we respect the ruling of the court. Obviously, all of us have to abide, but we have also given our own opinion that world over, engineering regulatory bodies have a say in training of engineers. Now, we have international accords, Washington Accord, Dublin Accord, and Sydney Accord. Washington Accord deals with international mobility of engineers, and it is expected that there is input of the regulatory body into the training and the curriculum. Now, the importance of this is when you get to Washington Accord and you become a signatory, and Engineers Board of Kenya is trying to do that, it then means our training and our graduates are recognized globally everywhere. Every other country that has signed the Washington Accord But that then also means that the curriculum is acceptable globally, and there are regular checks that the Washington Accord signatories will want to make to ensure that the curriculum and the trainers, the trainees that come out of it meet some certain criteria, some minimum, what we call graduate attributes. And then not only that, after they graduate, then they begin training, they undergo initial professional development, and they acquire some certain professional competencies, based on which then they can be licensed to practice. So while the ruling gave the entire process of the regulating the curriculum of engineering education to Commission of University Education, it puts us at odd, because a system needs to be in place whereby the regulator has a say in the curriculum, and then that is a global best practice. And our pleading is CUE needs to find a way of talking to EBK and find a way of working together, because we respect the ruling and you don't want to keep on fighting in court. But really, for us to have graduates who are recognized globally, then we need the curriculum having input from the regulator, who is Engineers Board of Kenya. And I know that there's a way out of all this, some understanding, some memorandum of understanding for the benefit of the entire profession. Because really, we lose if then we do not work with what is international best practice. We lose all of us as a profession. Yes.
One of the agenda that is going to be on the table next week during the forum is how to make our buildings greener. And it has been proven that buildings are a major contributor of green gas emission in the world. What do you expect to come out of that meeting?
This is a great time, because it is still the same time that the world is communicating matters to do with climate change. And honest to say, the building sector contributes a big portion of these greenhouse gases, which the world is trying to manage so that the people can live better lives. So as engineers, we have been having solutions to the building sector, talking of green buildings. What we are expecting the community of engineers to let the world know and discuss are things to do with, for instance, how have we formalized the solar energy in our buildings? Further to that, how are we managing waste in our buildings in a green manner, just to ensure that our world and our children are protected for the future? So we expect our engineers to give solutions in green energy solutions, which we are offering and are being offered in the market, and which have been offered elsewhere. That is including solar energy. We also have solutions in waste management, and the way we can use our biomass, that is the green waste, to generate energy for our homes, so that the pressure we are exposing to our grid can go down and we save our environment. Maybe I should add that in the energy sector, coming off the building sector, in the energy sector, Kenya has shown the world the trend in green energy. We have solutions in geothermal. We have solutions in solar power, wind power, and also hydro energy. So from where we stand as engineers in Kenya, we have shown the world that we can adopt green energy and it can work.
Very well. Statistically speaking, Engineer Shamia, I mean, buildings account for nearly 40% of a global greenhouse emission, 50% of the world's energy consumption, and 40% of raw materials. As a country, do we have a policy on how to embrace a sustainable buildings in this country?
Absolutely. I was privileged to appointed into this national committee by PS Major Retired Gordon Kihalangwa on finalization of the building code. And we had intense conversations we working on updating the building code. You know, the last building code was done in 1968.
Yeah.
So we have been working to finalize the update under NCA Act. We have inbuilt provisions for green buildings in the building code. For certain, I can assure you. We have even included
but those are proposals that are currently being made.
Absolutely. And we expect that the regulation, the building code, is supposed to be gazetted anytime. I mean, the bill is with the Attorney General. That document has inbuilt provisions for green building and sustainable buildings in terms of not only citing energy provision, circular economy. You know, you want to think about recycling.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that you reduce the extraction of natural resources. You know what I'm saying? So that there are provisions on how you will design, you will factor in life cycle analysis of the building and the embodied energy, so that then the building, because look, we consider materials, we design for safety, functionality, economy, and sustainability, and the construction materials have very big chunk. For instance, cement is energy intensive, but there are ways you can come up with means of reduction on reliance on clinker, and have cement replacement, materials, so that you reduce reliance on raw clinker. For instance, you have cement characteristics altered by reduction of the sources, the raw materials, and that way then you are enhancing sustainability, and you're making building construction to be lesser and lesser material intensive and extracting of materials. You also want to think about the materials you're using, and can you reuse them? You know what I'm saying? Can you think about timber? Can you think about steel? And instead of relying heavily on concrete. So we have inbuilt that in the building code. And there are other provisions, Energy Act and all that. We've talked about solar, we've talked about wind as other alternative source of energy, and hydro, so that we reduce reliance on thermal. So yes, there is infrastructure, there is legislation, and there are tools available for us. And one of the things we've done as IEK is expose our members to design life cycle analysis of buildings, to design buildings that are green buildings. You know what I'm saying? So, and our members are quite aware. Our next stage is, of course, to deal with now clients, to appreciate the essence of sustainable buildings. Because look, you need to think sustainability. You need to think future. And there is infrastructure, there is legislation. What we need to factor in is now behavior patterns for us as citizens, beginning with the developer to the designers, and so that there is that intention, and then we put it in practice.
Tell me this. Africa, or Kenya, and Africa in general, I mean, we are consumers of technology. Absolutely. I mean, when you look at our investment in R&D, and of course our registration of patent, I mean, it's negligible in the world. Yet we, like for example, Kenya, you continue to produce 2,000 engineers, on an annual basis. What do they do? Because we had to see innovations, that are well suited to deal with our challenges as a country.
No. It's a fact. Obviously, we may not be as advanced as the Western world, but I can tell you we have some of the top brains in this country, and our engineers who have opportunity in the US, the UK, and all that, they shine, and we have brains, best brains. We produce best brains in this country, and I can assure you, and I will not surprise you to tell you, we have a graduate in the University of Nairobi who has come up with a speed governor using artificial intelligence, and so that we can build a mechanism for vehicles to sense a speed bump. When it is you are driving, the vehicle can sense a speed bump. We have top brains in this country, and of course R&D requires resources, and we are a resource scarce country. What we can plead with, and especially budgetary allocations is that we provide resources for engineers now to venture more into research. And this country is not lack of innovations. M-Pesa was discovered, it's a global phenomenon.
That was
in terms of, the
innovation of M-Pesa happened in 2007.
Absolutely. But we also have other ideas.
What other M-Pesa innovation can we talk about?
So I've just given you
especially in the engineering
Absolutely.
sector.
I've just given you an example of the speed governor, designed here by our engineers and all that. But we also have opportunities, and we are growing that sector in terms of we have the high hub that has been birthed in the University of Nairobi, and we're having engineers now exposed into R&D. What we need to do is now to resource them, and I can guarantee you, give our engineers opportunities in terms of generating the ideas, concretizing them, resource them. We are going to have excellent innovations like you can have anywhere. Make no mistake, we have top brains in this country. We have engineers in academia, we have engineers in practice producing world-class solutions. I've had the privilege of working with engineers across the board, done projects with engineers from Australia, the UK, US, Canada, and I can tell you we are global match. Participated in conferences, around the world, and we have presented world-class papers, accepted World Engineers Conventions and all that.
Yes.
So really what we need to focus now is probably can we give more resources to our engineers so that we can be engaged more in research. And I can tell you we are going to have as brilliant as ideas as you can celebrate anywhere in the world.
I want to hear this from Engineer Morris. And he has put it very well.
Yes.
We do not put more resources in research and development in this country. It's not just in the engineering field. We are talking about almost all the sectors, across the board. So how do we inculcate a culture of harnessing, our energies, as engineers, and coming up with solutions for local-based problems?
That has been a challenge. How we can harness this capacity so that it actually reflects where we live and in our communities. I think the first thing we need to do, and my colleague here has suggested, is to give engineers an opportunity. Why do I say so? It is very hard for anybody to show what they are capable if they are not allowed to do what they know best. So we have a situation whereby in the country currently, most of the bodies that, for instance, deal with engineering matters are somehow, the Kenyan way of doing things, they are managed by people who, most of the time, and unfortunately, do not understand how those institutions are supposed to, what they are actually supposed to do. So you have a manager there who is supposed to be your teacher or somebody you are supposed to go to, who cannot tell you what are the, because engineering is about technical solutions which actually now impact on the other non-technical matters. So my belief is that we should actually create space for these innovators, give them freedom to work so that they don't feel restrained in any way, and they will give those solutions. I'll give an example of what we can achieve if, for instance, we gave our engineers the opportunity to innovate in manufacturing. Right now, the biggest problem that our country has is employment. Yet we know that the way to employ our people is through active involvement, which sometimes comes through manufacturing. Manufacturing is a forte of engineers. But when we go to manufacturing in Kenya, who are there? They are not necessarily engineers. We have not created an environment that can foster manufacturing and absorb these engineers so that they are innovative and they give our people jobs. So I think so that our engineers are able to reflect what they can do in our communities, we need to have strategies of how to involve them, because we know what they do. That is no secret. But are they the ones actually mandated with managing what they do? They are not the people. And therefore, we have a missing link. And when we have a missing link, then we cannot even be able to tell these people to be competent. We might not be able.
Engineer Kiteme, I mean, you have a situation where in this country, a lot of our agenda is driven by lawyers. How comes we have given engineers, doctors, and so much, and other professionals, you know, they seem like they have taken a back seat and allowed the legal fraternity to drive a lot of agendas in this country?
Well, I think that was a past, to be frank. We have a very vibrant...
It is still the present.
We have very vibrant body of engineers. We have taken our space. We have claimed our position. We have participated in lawmaking, because part of the problem is that there's been a lot of tinkering with the law. For example, you have the qualifications for the Director General for road authorities, for example. Recently there was an effort to change that so that it can be anyone. And engineers stood out and said, look, you want someone who is supposed to advise a minister on matters road, and that person can be someone else who is not an engineer? It is not possible. And thankfully our parliament appreciated that we were arguing from the point of protecting the interests of this country. If you want results in energy sector, for instance, you need to give that position to an engineer. If you want results in the water sector, for example, you need to give that position to water engineer. So the situation where we have people who are not technically competent and trusted with the roles that they cannot technically address, it becomes a point of a failure, because then we have policies being made by the people who don't understand the issues the legislating about. So I can tell you that is a past. Engineers have taken their position, and you'll continue to see this. Not only that, but also initiate policy initiatives. Policy initiatives that are good. And we want to work with the government, and we have reached out to counties, we have reached out to the relevant ministries of energy, infrastructure, and then saying, look, we have the ideas. Let us sit around the table, give you what is possible if you give the opportunity. And this is what the conference is all about. We are privileged to have interactions with the relevant CEOs of energy, water, and all that. And we want the partnership to grow, because we're saying engineers have the ideas. Give them the platform and opportunity to give you the best in infrastructure, in energy, in water, in healthcare, because really the economy is driven by the innovation and the ideas that the engineers have. But if then you don't give them the opportunity, you shun them, I mean, that's where we begin the fall. And I can tell you, the generation of engineers you are going to see beginning where I sit, what you have characterized probably in the past, right now we have taken our position, and you're going to see that going forward.
One of the discussion that will take place in Mombasa next week is the fourth industrial revolution and Industry 4.0, where the issues of smart cities and artificial intelligence in infrastructure will be discussed. The world is also moving from fossil fuel-driven vehicles, to smart vehicles. The world is moving from the cities as we know them to what is being referred to as smart cities. As engineers in Kenya, what is your role, or what role do you expect to play in ensuring that Kenya is not left behind in this agenda?
Engineers have actually already started that path. Recently, as we can see, we are having also these vehicles are already, some of the vehicles that we have been hearing around the world, which are non-fossil vehicles, are already landing in the market. And actually currently there's a lot of research also on intelligent systems in our local universities. That is to do with how we can harness the power of technology in doing the things that we are doing. And So what engineers are actually doing is, at the year level as of now, they have already undertaken their research. They are already importing these technologies. We have some companies locally which have imported these technologies to us. So maybe what we shall be doing this time round is we shall have a venue whereby for those who will be pursuing our conference, they will be able to interact with these technologies locally, and those who are able actually to join, because this is a great opportunity, even for the economy of the country. Those who are able to harness that opportunity will take advantage earliest. So that opportunity is what we shall give our not just engineers, even the people, to view the technologies and adopt what they can.
Because we have to wind up this engagement before we get to 12 o'clock. I want to hear from Engineer Kiteme. What should Kenyans expect out of the AKI Engineers Conference that starts on Monday next week up to Friday?
Absolutely. This is a great opportunity where we are going to be discussing ideas about bettering our infrastructure, investment in energy sector, investment in roads, water sector, investment in healthcare, and housing, because really we know we have a shortfall housing and all that. We are looking at, like you alluded, embracing the Industry 4.0, digital twinning, building information modeling. We're looking at, can we have, a bridge, both the physical bridge, but also a digital bridge, and we're able to monitor it remotely and all that. The ideas that are going to be happening in Mombasa are for the betterment of this country. It's only opportunity. We gather engineers and all the ideas that will come out of them, and we're able to make a memorandum and issue a communication to the government on the suggestions, the proposals the engineers have to advance our economy. And of course, we're coming from COVID-19 to enhance recovery of our economy. So we want to welcome the entire country to watch the space for engineers next week, because great ideas are coming from the conference from next week.
Very good. Engineer Maurice Kagwe and Engineer Shamia Kiteme, thank you very much for joining us here. And of course, we shall be looking forward to what engineers will come up with that will help this country move forward.
Our pleasure.
Your time is highly appreciated.
Our pleasure.
We are thankful
Very
for this
good.
opportunity.
Asante sana. And of course, our eyes shall be in Mombasa next week during the 28th Conference of Institutions of Engineers of Kenya to see what exactly solutions will be coming up to our local problems and of course, global solutions. Thank you very much. You have been watching Bizcheck. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Coming up next is Kurunzi Mashinani. Stay right here.
Is what the Lord commanded. We go forward into the land he promised our forefathers. I follow his word without question. It is not too late to save ourselves. Better to go back to Egypt than to die here. Moses, they meant no harm. They simply worry for themselves, as if the Lord hasn't proven he'll care for their every need.
We feel for your grief, Moses, but our animals will soon die of thirst.
They put their boots on the ground to defend and protect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Republic of Kenya. After thorough training, another lot of recruits is now ready for that active patriotic duty. Catch KBC Channel 1 for live coverage of Kenya Defence Forces pass-out parade from Moi Barracks, Eldoret.
The real estate sector in Kenya is populated by bogus land brokers and unqualified housing agents. But now there is a new attempt by